And if you will introduce the auditors.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Great to be with you tonight. Is it not on?
There it is.
Was it working?
It was. It came on there for a minute.
Do you want to trade?
Right, but if I take my finger off, I think it, okay. Because I'm not going to hold my finger on that.
This is push to talk.
Welcome. Hope everybody had a good July. Typically, we don't meet in July as a school board, and we didn't this past July. Board, I want to acknowledge our auditors. And let me just give a little bit of background. Last year in the legislative session, Senator Greg Buxton sponsored legislation that would place auditors into a school district or other entity for an extended period of time. And often we think about auditors as someone coming in for a short period of time and they're looking at a program, either the financial audit or the performance audit, how you're managing a specific program. This is a little different. This is probably from a much higher level. These auditors will probably be here for maybe 6 months with us, and I've looked at this as a real positive because I always welcome outside eyes looking at what we're doing, and if they have recommendations for improved performance, we want to hear that. But also there's some things that they'll be able to take back to policymakers, and they've already come to understand some of those nuanced pieces that would be beneficial to take back to policymakers and make some suggestions and recommendations. So anyway, welcome. We appreciate you being here. I want to mention just a brief item. We've got an item in the consent agenda that we need to make one modest adjustment on. It was a marquee for our Weaver Innovation High School, and previously the memo that you have in your board book says that part of the funding for that marquee was going to be taken out of concurrent enrollment funds. Just very briefly, the state reimburses school districts and ultimately schools on numbers of students who are enrolled in concurrent enrollment classes and receiving credit, passing those classes. And that money really should be used to enhance those programs, going back to how do we help teachers provide even greater learning experiences for students. Maybe there's need of some supplies or materials, or maybe the teacher needs some additional training to teach a concurrent enrollment class because it's a university class, and so sometimes that teacher will need some additional training. This is one that quite frankly, we just felt like that money ought to be redirected back into those programs and not spent on a marquee. And so we've worked with Robert, and we'll find the funding for the full amount with that marquee. And it's good to have a marquee, especially in a school like that, to help communicate with families and students events that are coming up. So that slight adjustment, that the focus here would be to redirect those concurrent enrollment funds back into the concurrent enrollment classes. That will benefit students and teachers. So just that modest adjustment.
Dr. Stephen,
Please.
is that open for donations?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you could do that could be done through our foundation,
Right.
and then, it's less out of Robert's pocket.
That's a tough pocket.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to mention to you, and I'll bring it up as we have our discussion around the bond election. But I wanted to report to you that Lane and I have now visited 9 city councils. John has been to some of them. Jan attended last night as a member of the Roy City Council. And they have been very positive. One of the things that I've seen as we've made these visits, and I think we have, and we've also met with the Weaver County Commissioners. I think we have about 5 city councils to go. Plain City is tomorrow. But we have seen a lot of support. People recognize the need for a bond based on significant growth in the north and west portion of the county. And there's been tremendous appreciation, even though, I've always put in context with my discussion that the board hasn't yet made a decision. Most likely that decision would be tonight, but our survey data is reflecting that while there is strong support for a bond, when it does not raise the tax rate, support for that bond, if the list of projects becomes greater, that it requires a tax rate increase. It's not that you don't have any support, but that support drops significantly, probably to the point that it compromises the possibility that the bond would pass, and that data will come out even again tonight. But there's been just great support among our city council members, our mayors, and so that's been positive. Commissioners, absolutely. So tonight, what will happen is prefacing the board's discussion and decision on whether or not to bond and what set of projects you would recommend if, in fact, you decide to bond. Prefacing that discussion and decision, we'll ask Scott Zelmer to briefly summarize the needs based on enrollment growth and based on some aging facilities. We'll ask Lane Findley to summarize survey data, and that's both in-house and that scientific survey conducted by Y2 Analytics, as well as some focus groups. And then we'll ask Robert to update us on our financial capacity. And I think that will help set the stage for a meaningful discussion among the board. You'll have the information that you need, I think, to make a wise decision and ultimately looking for a motion at that point. So that's probably the way our board meeting tonight around that particular issue will go. I don't know if you have any comments or input on that or questions.
I just think it's very positive. I think it's great to see the positive outlook that we're receiving. It's good.
I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm excited in more ways than one. And I feel that, Superintendent, as we've been out in the city councils, the excitement of those people who want to support and have us go and understand. And I must say, in a time where we really don't need kudos, but it has to go to this man, because we waited till we squoze and we followed your goal. And your purpose was, once they fill that squeeze, we'll be able to go through with that. And I truly believe that that's what's going to happen in November, or we wouldn't do it, right? When we got cities who were going like this, and several last night probably, I'm not real happy, because they're raising taxes. So for us to do that is kudos. He's given a lot to us as he's made the presentation. I'm very thankful for it, but really, we support what he has done. And I have to say thank you to you and the team and your leadership. And I'm excited.
Well, thank you, John. We're in a much better place than we were about 16 months ago. You remember that meeting here
We were sweating.
when
His blood was gone.
yeah,
Jeff looked like he'd been gut punched.
I had been gut punched. Because I think they said the maximum was, in
There's one of our men right there.
So we are glad, Matt, that we've had some things work in our favor with not only growth, but some increases in assessed values and just increasing our capacity. We've, under your direction in Preston, been able to make some wise investments in terms of refinancing some existing bonds and getting remarkable rates on those refinances. That allows you to restructure existing debt. So just all this works together. It doesn't just happen. And Robert, appreciates so much the work that you've done with Matt and Preston.
Yes, we do.
Anyway,
Yes, we do.
that's probably maybe the only other thing I'll mention. This is in relation to the reopening of schools and the safety kinds of issues around the pandemic. Board, what we're starting to see is increasingly decisions have to be based on state law, maybe even more so than on health department guidance and so forth. For example, face masks. While health officials and CDC are recommending, state law prohibits. And so our stance going in is that we recommend, but we can't require based on state law. In fact, we met with the principals this week, and I've had a lot of emails from families that feel strongly about face masks, that they want them, and I just tried to walk them through where we are on that. But one of the concerns, and I've shared it with our principals that they have, is I'm going to send my son or daughter in a face mask. I hope they don't get teased or harassed. And so I really made a point with our principals to make sure that they're creating an environment in their school, and every teacher is creating an environment in their class where no child would be teased or harassed or bullied because they're choosing to wear a face mask. Some have elderly persons living in their home or individuals in their home who have compromised immune systems, and they want their kids in school, but they also want to create some safe environment. So we emphasize that. I think we're probably going to be in the same situation with quarantine protocols, that we will recommend, not require. Let me just give you a scenario, for example. If we will still contact trace and notify if someone has been exposed to an individual who has tested positive for COVID-19. There are 3 factors that would exempt someone from even considering the quarantine protocol: if the person exposed has been fully vaccinated, if the person exposed has tested positive for COVID-19 within the last 90 days, or if the person exposed was wearing a face mask at the time of the exposure. If any of those 3 variables apply, then they just don't even have to think about quarantining. But otherwise, the language in the contact tracing and the notification would be your student or you have been exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID-19. We would strongly recommend that you quarantine for 10 days or wear a mask for the next 10 days. And I think that stance will be consistent with other school districts, and it's more easily defensible in terms of putting our principals and our teachers in just very bad situations. Because again, increasingly, I think we're going to have to come down to state law, and that's where we can hold our ground, so to speak, as opposed to guidance. Okay, so I think we'll treat masks and quarantining in the same way, that we'll recommend but not require.
Very well. Board, anybody have questions? Dr. Stevens? Seeing none, we have a few minutes if you'd like to make a pit stop. Robert, can I visit with you for 5 seconds, please? Sure. Do you? That it wasn't on. Sorry.